Hey folks, this is Curtis Brown, your instructor for HSEP 302. Today is Wednesday, February 6th. Apologies for the delay. I usually prefer to do these videos earlier in the week, but sometimes there'll be delays. Still proceed with the class. Again, this class requires reading, not a lot of reading, but requires reading. And so since you have the syllabus, you have all the resources and documents and the textbook, proceed with the reading. I usually post the discussion board question on Sunday evening or Monday morning. The discussion board question is usually something directly related to the textbook and the resources provided in the documents folder. And I try to make you think and consider the application of the information you're reading in the real world setting. And this is all from the perspective of an emergency manager. So this past week for our discussion board question, I asked you to consider if you were the emergency management director in the city of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, and to rank in the technological or man-made disasters, structure fires, dam failures, hazardous material incidents, nuclear and radiation accidents, and terrorism. And there's no right answer, I guess. The sad thing is, with emergency managers, we're constantly looking at and evaluating the risks and hazards in our area. But given the significance of Washington, D.C., one of the cities targeted through the 9/11 attacks, it is important to consider and prioritize terrorism, which many of you all did. We understand that there's a lot of historical significance to Washington, D.C. It's the seat of our government, the White House, Congress, Arlington, Virginia, the Pentagon, the attack of 9/11, and a lot of critical infrastructure. And so for terrorist groups or individuals who are looking to get the attention that they want, DC is a high value target. So we work closely here in Virginia with the folks in DC on special events. The State of the Union last night, we worked with DC to work on the security plan for that. We do that every year. Every 4 years when we have an inauguration of a new president, we collaborate with them on that. These are massive security events with a lot of different moving parts, state, federal, local assets, the Department of Defense, all trying to secure both the ground as well as the airspace to prevent a terrorist attack. So many of y'all put that into your response, and I like the back and forth, the engagement that y'all have in terms of the reflection on your classmates. For the other hazards, they all are very much important as well. When we think of hazardous materials incidents, that could be as simple as a truck carrying hazardous materials overturning. So those could definitely be issues and escalate. Here in Virginia, at the Naval Station down in Virginia Beach, there was an incident a year and a half ago where thousands of gallons of toxic oil to fuel some of these fighter jets was spilt out and got into the waterways and into some of the communities, and it became a massive hazardous materials incident response. So that is definitely a consideration. Structural fires, this is why we have all the fire departments with the great equipment. They have the hazardous material equipment, but structural fires are always dangerous, especially in a city such as DC that have older structures. So those are constantly areas that could escalate. Again, fire departments usually can handle the day-to-day stuff, but from an emergency management standpoint, if you have a large fire, think of it in the context of a wildfire growing, impacting multiple communities or structures. It's the same thing in an urban environment for structure fires. Dam failures, there are a lot of dams in Virginia, but surprisingly, there are dams that would impact flooding inside of D.C. If I would have created my list, I probably would have had terrorism as number one, followed by nuclear and radiation accidents. Um, then probably structure fires, hazardous material structure fires, and then dam failures. And I would probably try to create a reason for both. But terrorism, again, the elevated threat since 9/11. Nuclear radiation accidents, again, sort of similar to terrorism, but it could be intentional or an accident. But given the large number of people in such a tight space, the threat and the impact to people and the significance to our economy, our leadership, et cetera, would be significant. And then followed by structural fires, hazardous materials, and dam failures. So what I'm going to do moving forward, I'll probably select 5 different students to provide comments on each week. And when I do the, either I'll send it out on an announcement, but I'll let you know who those 5 students are so you can look at some of my insight. And if I do 5 students for each week, that should cover everyone for the whole semester. So when I do the feedback, I might ask a follow-up question or just give some critique of what you put down. But continue to, again, do the reading, apply the reading to the question. You do not have to cite the source, sort of like APA, but you should definitely reference the reading and say, per the reading, you know what I'm saying, you agree or disagree. Apply the reading to some of your own knowledge or current events. This past week, you also had a 10-question quiz that was due on Friday at 6 o'clock. Again, the quizzes will be either short answer, fill in the blank, multiple choice, and applied directly to the reading from the previous weeks. So for many of y'all, you saw that it was pretty easy if you did the reading and stayed up with the reading. So again, just want to keep hammering that point. This is an online environment, so you keeping up with the reading is very important. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll happy to set up a call with you. For this week, we turn our attention to preparedness and planning, one of the disciplines of emergency management or phases of emergency management. Remember, the 4 phases of emergency management: preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. Now that we have a good sense of the risks and hazards and threats that we face in the emergency management world, we now can say, how can we prepare for those different events and take actions? And one of the important parts of doing that is planning, leveraging your capabilities, connecting with the different disciplines, whether law enforcement, fire, or health, pulling all the right stakeholders to the table, the nonprofit community, the Red Crosses, the private sector who owns a lot of critical infrastructure, and developing a plan that assigns everyone a role and a responsibility. Again, emergency management is about coordinating and leveraging all the different partners to deal with these emergencies, because what you're trying to do is get the community back to normal, to prevent the loss of life, to prevent the greater impact to critical infrastructure, and return to normal as quickly as possible. So planning is essential to doing that. So a part of your reading this week is about understanding preparedness, what it means, how that connects to the risk. So again, this is a building block. You now understand the risks and hazards. Now you can move forward with planning and preparedness, because those efforts are directly tied to the risks and hazards. So you have reading in chapter 4. Also, please pay careful attention to Comprehensive Planning Guide 101, chapter 1, the basics of planning. In the emergency management world, this is the key resource that guides how emergency management plans. So understanding the core concepts, the structure of these plans, what goes into them are critically important. One thing you'll see in there is about emergency operation plans. Here in Virginia, every local government by the Code of Virginia is required to have an EOP, emergency operation plan. It governs how that locality will respond to, their most likely threats. And many of them are, again, flooding, hurricanes, cyber events, etc. But the structure, how they're organized, in many cases, they all follow the guidance from FEMA through this Comprehensive Planning Guide 101. This is one of the aspects of the post 9/11 world where FEMA was empowered to provide guidance and direction across the country to enhance preparedness. And this guide is one that came out of it, as well as the lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina, et cetera. Our state has a Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operation Plan. That too also follows the concepts within CPG 101. The question for this week is, again, applying what you've read in the material, understanding the importance of planning, the key concepts that go into it, and why emergency planning is essential to preparing for all hazards. And then I want you to see what issues or challenges exist for emergency managers as they're planning for these complex events. I want you to think critically about that question. So when I provide these discussion questions, really make sure you're answering each question. Provide a little bit of information for both. Reference the material, so it indicates that you've been reading the material. Other items I just wanted to discuss is the independent courses. As I mentioned, those will not be due until later in the semester, but it'll be great if you complement your weekly assignments by doing them. They're listed in the syllabus, but again, there is time to catch up if you don't. But I will not provide any extensions at the end, so it's probably best to move forward and do those independent courses. I think they take between 2.5, 3 hours at the max. Probably a lot less, quite honestly, but make sure you get those and make sure you get the certificate for those. Emails, again, feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions or comments. I'm happy to set up a conference call with you and we can go over some of the material. There was one other item I wanted to address, but I can't think of it right now. Let me see. All right, completely slipped my mind. I didn't write it down. But anyway, feel free to, again, reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. Happy to set up a call. Continue to do good work and get the discussion board questions answered and engage your fellow students. Next week, we'll move on to continue a discussion on preparedness and planning. I'm going to have a video interview with one of the important people here in Virginia who helps us with our preparedness planning, and I'll give you some first-person insight to the challenges related to preparedness planning. Again, hope all is well, and hope you have a good rest of the week. Thanks.